Okay. The award recipients were invited to attend tonight's meeting. Some of them may be on the line. Typically, we have a recognition luncheon, but that was just another victim of COVID, and we're not allowed to get together and have those big group settings. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the list of service award recipients, and then we do have a short video. So, and I'll go through them. And when I say milestones, it's basically the 5, 10, 15 years. So I'll tell you which milestone is being reached, followed by a list of the employees, as well as what department they work in. And then I'll show the video. So for 5 years, we have 3 employees. One is Jesse Halbig, who works, he's a wastewater collection system worker 2. You have myself, your general manager, and you have Raul Radarte, who is also a wastewater collection system worker 2. And those 3 employees are celebrating 5 years with the district. Celebrating 10 years, we have 3 employees. We have Steven Saavedra, he's a pump and motor tech 2. Sally Sheets, she's an accounting technician, very important role. She processes all of our payroll, so very, very important. Yeah. And Jonathan Todd, who's with our IT group. And those 3 have been with us, as I said, 10 years. We have 5 employees reaching their 15-year milestone. That's Arturo Alvarez, who's a meter service worker 2. David Elpin, who's a mechanic over in our fleet department. Georgia Galindez, she's a computerized maintenance management systems planner. Toby Luna, who is a water systems operator 2. And Diane Posvar, who is an executive secretary. So all 5 of them are 15 years. 2 employees reaching their 20-year milestone. We have Russell Kubota, and Russell's a landscape maintenance worker 2. And Julie Neal, and she's one of our customer service representative 2s. And last and not least is our only 30-year award recipient this year, and that's Ann Lopez. She's an engineering technician 2. So awesome job. And that's celebrating 14 employees with a total combined service of 190 years. Wow. To our Vallecitos customers. So that's a pretty impressive slate of candidates there. So I'm going to go ahead and share the video that was made to recognize these employees, and bear with me for a second here. Optimize. Can you see the video screen?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay, here we go. And be ready on your volume, because sometimes it comes in low or high. So here we go. Uh-oh.
It paused on my end, Glenn. I don't know if it's just me.
Yeah, mine too. Yeah, I don't know.
Uh,
I'll try it one last time and then we'll move forward. Okay, it appears there's something wrong with the video. I apologize to our service award recipients, but I'm disinclined to keep trying because I don't think we're going to get any better.
Understood.
All right,
Well-
so congratulations to all the service award recipients. Even taking me out of the picture, 185 years of combined service experience. It's pretty incredible. So I'll turn it back over to you, President Sanella.
President Sanella,
Yes, Director Hernandez.
perhaps you can get that glitch taken care of, Glenn, and then we can review the rest of it at our next meeting. It's incredible, the staff we have and the service they've provided, working on the other side of the counter in my architectural capacity. I've worked with some of the staff, and it's just amazing group of people.
Yeah, we'll work the glitch out. We reviewed the video before and it worked fine, so I don't know what happened tonight, but if the board would be so kind, we'll put it on the agenda next week or next meeting as well and run through the whole video.
Very
That
good.
would be great. Would any of my colleagues like to share any thoughts at this time? I'm having a little bit of technical difficulties myself. If you'd like to, please go ahead.
I just want to extend my congratulations to all of the service award recipients. Well done. The video looks great. Maybe it's a buffering issue, but thank you to Alicia also for putting that video together, highlighting the employees. Well done. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Director Boyd Hodgson. And I'll just pile on and echo what my colleagues have already said, but congratulations to all the service award winners. There's been countless studies, HR studies that say that the main reason why employees remain at their employer is not their salary. It's because of the place they work, the people that they work with, the culture of the organization. And when we see, especially from a board perspective, when we see tenure numbers like this, it's really pleasing to know that we must be doing something right from a senior staff and from a board standpoint to create that kind of culture that people want to be part of. And just thank you so much for everything that you do for our customers every day.
All right.
And hopefully we'll be able to meet in person in the future and recognize folks without the video glitches. So that would be nice.
We all look forward to that day.
Okay, we'll move along. Thanks, Glenn.
You're welcome.
Go ahead and move to the consent calendar this evening. All matters listed under the consent calendar will be voted upon by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a board member or member of the public requests that a particular item be removed from the consent calendar, in which case it'll be considered separately under action items. I will entertain a motion to approve tonight's consent calendar.
Move to approve, Hernandez.
Okay, and I'll second the motion. So we have a motion by Director Hernandez and a second by Director Sanella to approve tonight's consent calendar. Is there any discussion or items that need to be pulled? I don't hear or see any, so we'll go ahead and conduct a roll call vote. Director Hernandez,
Yes.
Director Vallecitos,
Yes.
Director Boyd Hodgson,
Yes.
Director Pennick,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. Motion passes unanimously. Okay, let me catch up here. That takes us to the first action item of this evening, item 2.1, our urban retail water suppliers water loss management. And I'll turn it over to you, Glenn, to introduce it.
Yeah, thank you, President Sanella. So every year, the all water districts, including Vallecitos, are required to submit an annual report on water losses to the State Water Resources Control Board. So Chris Robbins is going to make the presentation tonight. Chris, take it away.
Thank you, General Manager Plim. Everybody can hear me okay?
Yes,
And I'm hoping you can see the screen with the annual water loss submittal. Is that right?
we can.
Terrific. So this goes back to 2015. There was a Senate Bill 555 that was passed and added to the California Water Code section. And it requires urban water suppliers such as Vallecitos to submit a completed and validated water loss audit annually to the California Department of Water Resources starting in October of 2017. The California Nevada section of the AWWA kind of took the lead on this, came up with a group of stakeholders, worked together to create the California Water Loss Control Collaborative. And they basically developed what was called a water loss technical assistance program. And a lot of us went through the training of this program. Part of the effort to make sure that we want to save water in California, and really important that water agencies are secure in their water supplies and takes good care of the water coming into the system. The collaborative, the team recommends that you put together a team from your water conservation group, your supply and operations group, your billing and finance team, and your engineering team. And for Vallecitos, that includes Mike Arthur, our principal financial analyst. And Mike really does the lion's share of the work on this project. I probably have the easiest time, which is why I probably got selected to make the presentation before the board. James Gumpel, our assistant general manager, serves on this. Ryan Morgan, capital facilities senior engineer, works on this. Ed Pedrazi in operation and maintenance, and myself. That's the team that works on this together. Part of this training and this water loss effort includes a lot of water loss terminology. Words like apparent losses and real losses. The apparent losses, it's implied that it's just like a meter reading error or something like that, or the meter doesn't necessarily catch every last drop that goes through the system, versus things like real losses where the water comes from a main break, it goes out, you never get to bill for it. Those are some of the differences. And here's a really nice complicated slide showing all the different terminology they have for water loss terminology. How much goes into the system, how much is non-revenue water, how much is revenue water. The one thing that's a little sad about this slide and the way it shows is it looks like most of the water is non-revenue water, and that's untrue. It's just that there's that many names for different types of non-revenue water. So our results for calendar year 2020 audit shows the following values. The water that went into the system was 14,839 acre feet. We had authorized consumption of 14,079 acre feet, water losses of 759 acre feet, and non-revenue water of 848 acre feet. And we had a water audit validity score of 70, and 70 seems like it's not a real great score. Sounds like a C- when I was in school, but I checked with DWR and the average value in the state of California is a 63. So it's really not indicative of the scores like we would have in school. It is a validity score that DWR came up with. So don't associate that with the 100% equals an A+ scoring. We expect at some point they're going to require some improvement. I've been talking to DWR staff about that. We expect them at some point to direct agencies to improve or increase their water audit data validity score, that's 70. It's not clear what the requirements will be. I expect they'll tell districts and agencies to move it up 1 or 2 points per year. And if agencies are required to improve their score, staff will identify improvements to achieve the target level. And we already have some of those in mind. And DWR may also come up with a standard for water loss that they want to see certain values of water loss. And based on the numbers that we had, the district annual water loss is 5.12% of the water that's totally supplied. This is now an annual process. We do this every year. We submit the information at the end of September. It's basically due on October 1st. And just want to report out to the board that, yes, we accomplished it. And we did a validated score, and we grabbed our old pal Rob Shaw who used to work here as a validator, but now he works over at BID, but he served as validator for us once again. And that concludes my presentation, and we'll take some questions.
Great. Any questions from the board?
One question. One question.
Yep, go ahead.
I don't know if you can hear me. I would just love to see it over the year. Is there a graph that shows over the last 5 years, how we've been doing?
I think we could actually put something together like that rather easily. It's actually held rather steady, and I think Mike's on the line, and he might be able to chime in. He actually does the lion's share of the work and does a lot of the data input, and it's on Excel spreadsheets. But strangely, a lot of our numbers don't move a whole lot. We've gotten that 70 score pretty consistently every single year. And as I recall, the losses don't seem to ever change a whole heck of a much.
Yeah, the water loss is usually in the 4 to 8% range. So it does change, but not a lot. But that's certainly something we could do. We could crunch those numbers, work with Mike, and get the numbers or get the information out to the board.
I mean, I didn't no need to do additional work. I was just wondering if, like you're saying, if somebody wants to see improvement over the years. I mean, it seems like we could already beat them to the punch by showing this is what we've been doing. But I mean, it's hard to improve on perfect. So,
Yeah.
but if there's room for improvement, it's always nice to do that as well.
Thank
We
you,
already have that data, so we can get it for you.
Thanks, Mike.
Director Boyd Hodgson.
Thank you. I also had the question about the losses over time. I appreciate the validity score. That means that we are accurately measuring how much we have lost, which is important. But I would like to see how many acre feet over years we tend to lose, and if that percentage, jumps around a little bit between 5.12%, or if it goes down or whatnot. I think if it's relatively constant, that means that we're doing a good job of identifying what needs to be fixed and being proactive in fixing that. So I think that would be some really good news, but I would like to see it over time. I have another question. Are there incentives for water districts that come maybe from the state or federally to try to reduce the amount of water loss? And conversely, sort of like the sticks and the carrots, are there sticks if we do not curb that? Or there disincentives that we would want to pay attention to, or some kind of punitive measure that we're subjected to if we don't? I mean, other than the cost of water being a precious resource, the cost of the planet, but are we being punished if we don't try to reduce the amount of water waste?
General Manager Prim, I think I can address that question. I expect there will be some punitive effort on behalf of the state. Part of the problem that they're dealing with right now is not all the agencies are actually submitting their water loss data. When I spoke to one of their staff last month, it's basically time for everything to get in, and there's almost 500 water agencies. And they were down in about the 70s in the number of agencies that had responded, and we're all supposed to do it. So I think eventually there'll be some consequences for that. One of the good things I can tell you is we're a fairly new system, and that works in our favor. And I don't know the exact data, but I know some of the older cities, particularly like I think Philadelphia, has a really tough time with water loss just from such an old, ancient water system. General Manager Prim, is there anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I'll add in. I think the state stopped buying carrots a long time ago and diverted the money to buying more sticks. So there's definitely more disincentives than incentives. It doesn't seem in this area that they've really pulled out the sticks yet. I would say it's a relatively new program, started in 2015. They're in the process of gathering data, seeing if they can draw comparisons amongst agencies. And I bet they're having discussions right now about what are the standards? Where do we want agencies to go? Are there either minimum scores or minimum increases or decreases that they want each agency to see? And there may be consequences if you don't reach those milestones. But right now, there aren't a lot. The one carrot I will say that they throw out is money. So they do try to identify funding programs that agencies can apply for to put towards projects that may result in less water loss. So we're always looking for those types of things, but very competitive. They tend to award those funds to, I would say, more needy agencies. It's usually a need-based thing, and unfortunately, we don't rank very high in those. But we'll continue to look for those opportunities. But just at the last meeting, the board heard the presentation and approved the agreement to do that satellite leak detection. That's a great example of using technology to try to get this score even lower. You may not catch it as soon as it leaks, but if you catch it even halfway through the year, that's a half a year of savings that you've realized, real numbers. And just for clarification, when we start looking at the trend over time, I assume the board members are talking about the real water loss, the water that actually left the pipe. To me, that's the important number. Some of these apparent losses, like for billing inaccuracies, there may not be a molecule of water that left the pipe, but there's some disagreement between different types of meters. And although we strive to correct those aren't as important in my mind as water that actually gets outside of the system and is not put to a beneficial use. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Chris, unless you were done, Chris, and ready to turn it back over to President Sanella.
I was done and ready to turn it back over.
All right, President
Okay.
Sanella.
Before we move on to the next item, is there any other comments or questions? Okay. We will, and then Glenn, are you keeping an eye on any public hands?
Yeah, it's a little more difficult when there's nobody with their hand raised right now.
Great. Okay, we'll move on to item 2.2, water supply conditions update. Is that going to be you, Chris, again?
Yeah, that's also
Yeah.
Chris. Yeah.
So this is one of those situations where sadly I had put together the board packet and the board report, a week ago, and things have changed in the 1 week time frame. So not in your report, but in my PowerPoint that I'm sharing here, I think you probably all caught that following the second driest year on record and record low storage in California's largest reservoirs, Gavin Newsom issued a proclamation yesterday extending the drought emergency statewide. So the governor is definitely stepping up, wanting us to step up our water conservation efforts in California as the Western United States faces another third potential dry year. Some of the interesting news is our water year ended. It ended and it starts again on October 1st. So the water year goes from October 1st through September 30th. And the 2021 water year was the second driest year on record, according to the Department of Resources. And they also gave some figures from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration that, the previous month of October and then June and July were some of the warmest on record that we've had. The Northern 8 Sierra Index, I've been showing this previously, and so now the 2021 year is closed, but the percent for this date is 15%. The good news I'll tell you is that there is rain scheduled for the end of this week in Northern California, and I think one of the articles I saw called it a rain bomb cyclone. So let's hope they get good amounts of rain that doesn't damage anything and good amounts of snow. That would be good news for the entire state. This is the old snowpack content from the previous year. They're not doing the snowpack yet, but as you can recall, there was like no snow on June 30th, which was a really bad figure at the time. The reservoir storage was down. The Lake Oroville is at 22% and San Luis Reservoir at 11%. So those reservoirs weren't looking too good. Let's hope we get some storms to fill them up again. We're already aware of the Colorado River shortage that has been declared. And as of October 4th, so, a couple of weeks ago, Lake Mead at 35% and Lake Powell at 30%. Temperature outlook, you can see the California and the lower Southern California above normals favored. For precipitation, below normal for Southern California is favored. But again, there's some good storms up in Northern California. We will be bringing our new ordinance, our new drought ordinance to the board on, I believe it's November 17th, I think is the date that we'll be bringing that forward. There's some specific noticing requirements that I have to work with Ann Johnson to make sure we do before we bring that forward. And of course, we did have that video the other day where we talk about what people can specifically do. In conclusion, so we started a new water year on October 1st. Some good news is that 16% of the water use efficiency from the last drought, they see that as permanent, that it's hardened, that it's built in. That's a good thing. And the big news that the governor extends the drought emergency statewide. Any questions?
Yes, I would add to that. So it's good news that we're using less water per capita, like Chris mentioned. And I think those are a lot of permanent changes, but it makes it more challenging when the governor asks for further reductions. So when, if he comes out and says another 15 or 20%, it's just really difficult to find ways to help the customers cut that additional percentage when they've already changed out their shower heads and their toilets and removed their turf. Those types of things. So it's going to be more and more challenging as we go forward to meet the conservation targets that we have. And President Sinella, we do have a member of the public with their hand raised whenever you want me to call on her.
Let's go ahead and recognize them.
All right, Miss Martin, go ahead.
Yes, good evening. Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. First and foremost, a huge shout out and bravo to the incredible staff that works so hard and works so well. Great congratulations to them. Second, in all of San Diego County, this district is the only public sewer agency that subsidizes urban development with our ratepayer money. This district has $113.5 million of our ratepayer money in reserves, and then transferred 10.1 million of it to developer money. Our money should be used to offset water rate increases, especially now that drought conditions, the statewide declaration by our governor, will lead to rate increases to counter less water consumption. So I would strongly encourage this board to use our current reserves to help offset any water rate increases. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Okay, and thank you, Chris, for the presentation. Appreciate it. I had one kind of question, but did you say that up in Northern California that they're expecting what'd you call it, a rain bomb cyclone?
Yeah, they called it, I think, a bomb cyclone or something like that. So there's going to be several storms going one right after the other up in Northern California.
That's good news. Are these names like bomb cyclone, and then a couple of years ago, I think there was the
Atmospheric River, right?
The Pineapple Express. Are these relatively new terms? It kind of reminds me of the different types of moons. When I was a kid growing up, there was a full moon, there was a harvest moon, there was once in a blue moon, right? People would say that, but now they have all these like pink werewolf moons, and are these all new terms, or what?
I think atmospheric river is what they really like to title the ones that come into California. Now over on the East Coast, we call it, it's a hurricane, that's what comes in and dumps water on the East Coast. And we don't have the same type of weather patterns here. And finally, recently, when we get a big storm that puts a lot of snow in the Sierras, they call that like an atmospheric river, like it's a river up in the sky, dropping water. I think the bomb cyclone is a reporter, catching a weather guy and having some fun with it.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just kind of curious. It's all fun, but it's interesting terminology for sure. Any other questions, comments by my teammates? Okay, I don't see any hands, so we'll move along. Let's go on to item 2.3, and this is a discussion regarding the return to in-person public meetings.
And I'll
Glenn,
take that. Yeah, I'll take that, President Zanella. Thank you. Yeah, so this item is on the agenda to allow the board an opportunity to discuss when and if they want to return to in-person board meetings. Some recent bills that have been passed do allow agencies to continue to meet remotely under certain conditions. And our meetings, our Zoom meetings have been in full compliance with all the applicable laws. We're fully transparent. People can view, participate, and it's actually in some ways a lot better than pre-COVID situations. If the board were to want to continue with these video conferencing meetings, the board would be required to make certain findings every 30 days. And Mr. Gilpin can go over that in more detail if the board is interested. We have received 3 emails encouraging the board to resume in-person board meetings. And it seems like based on the language in the emails, it's pretty clear that they were part of a coordinated effort. Each email indicates that they feel that there's a lack of transparency, which I believe is absolutely incorrect. Fully transparent, I think it's easier and safer for our customers to attend our meetings now than to attend those than they were in person before. And not only can the customers watch the meetings from their own home, they can participate in the meetings. And I think our attendance in our Zoom meetings is greater than it ever was in the pre-Zoom environment. So if the board did choose to return to in-person board meetings, there's some decisions we'd have to make. And I would suggest that all board members plan on attending. It would be pretty difficult from a technology perspective if we tried to have I'll call it a hybrid meeting where some board members were in the boardroom and some were attending remotely. And I think AB 361, I believe it is, states that any decision-making activity at a meeting, if you're teleconferencing, would need to be suspended if there are technological problems. So that's if you continue to go remotely. So if we were back in the boardroom, the board members would be there. I would be there in person, but I would require all of my employees to participate remotely via Zoom because our workforce rules is that our employees can't congregate in any way with or without masks. We try to keep people separate and as far apart as possible. Attendees, the public, would be required to wear masks if they're unvaccinated. We would recommend that everyone wear masks regardless of their vaccination status, but we do not propose to check vaccination status. It would be a self-attestation. It would be difficult to provide 6 feet of social distancing for board members. Although that's not a legal requirement, we do try to meet that wherever possible. We had thought about placing plexiglass between the board members, but for it to be effective, it would have to extend so far back towards the rear wall that it would violate ADA and safety egress requirements. So I don't think the plexiglass in our boardroom would help if the board members wanted to sit at the dais. We have configured the room to provide maximum separation for members of the public. We've removed a lot of the seats and we've kept probably half a dozen or so seats socially distanced to the maximum extent possible. So tonight we're looking for direction from the board. So first of all, does the board want to return to in-person board meetings on November 3rd or at some later date? Another thing we'd want direction on is if the meetings were to be held in person, would there be a Zoom component? And if there's a Zoom component, does that mean that people can just watch it via Zoom from the privacy of their own home, or do they get to participate? Anytime you have this hybrid setting, it increases the chance for technical problems. And as I mentioned before, if the technology problems are on our side, we have to suspend the meeting if there's any action being taken. If the board wants to make or continue to have the meetings via Zoom, we would need to make findings at tonight's meeting and then every 30 days after that. And I'm going to let Mr. Gilpin chime in here, and he can walk the board through those findings and any legal aspects of continuing to have the meetings remotely or returning to in-person board meetings. So Mr. Gilpin, if you can help the board understand the requirements.
I have a quick point of order before we start that. I noticed that the closed captioning is not running. And so I'm just wondering if there's a way to put that up.
Yeah, let me see. Thank you for pointing that out. Patrick, if you're still with us, do you know how to enable that?
Working on it.
Okay. Thank you, Director Boyd Hodgson. Yeah, I disabled it on my screen, so I didn't notice it wasn't operating.
I thought that was individually.
Well, there's a master switch that enables it, but then each individual can choose whether it gets displayed on their screen or not. And that's what I was mentioning. On my screen, I've disabled that, but that shouldn't have disabled it on from the master switch perspective, because I disabled mine many meetings ago. So so while Patrick tries to look into that, is it okay if we move forward with
Yeah,
it?
it's back on, at least on my
now.
screen.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Patrick.
Welcome.
All right. So Mr. Gilpin.
So as General Manager Pruitt indicated, if the board would chooses to prefer or to proceed with teleconference meetings, under the new law, we would need to make findings this evening. We're required to make findings at least 30 days after the first teleconference meeting, which was our prior meeting, and then every 30 days thereafter. The findings we have to make is there's an overriding or overarching requirement, one, that we're in a proclaimed state of emergency. That's not a finding for us to make. It's that we are in a proclaimed state of emergency. So then the board is required by a majority vote to make one of two findings. The first finding is that state or local officials have imposed or recommended measures for social distancing, which currently exists. So we could make that finding. The alternative finding is you could find on your own that as a result of the emergency meeting, meeting in person would present an imminent risk to the health and safety of attendees. So you can make one of those two findings in order to continue the teleconference meeting under what I would say are the relaxed standards. You may recall under the Brown Act prior to this amendment, people could participate by teleconference, but if you were, for example, the majority had to be within the district's boundaries. If you were teleconferencing, for example, from a hotel room, you would have to post the agenda on your hotel room door and prop the door open while you participate in the meeting. So the relaxed standards don't have those posting access requirements. So in summary, in order, if you want to continue to proceed with teleconference meetings, the board will need to make a finding that either state and local officials have imposed or are recommending social distancing measures, or that meeting in person would present an imminent risk to the health and safety of attendees. You're safe making the first finding because those conditions currently exist. Not to say that you couldn't make the second finding.
Okay, thank you both, Jim and Glenn. Do we have any members of the public, Glenn, that would like to speak on this matter?
I do not see any hands raised.
Okay, if you happen to see one, let me know, please.
Okay.
Then I'll open it up to my board colleagues for open discussion, and hopefully through that discussion we can find some consensus to give direction on to staff on how to proceed. So I'll open it up if anybody wants to kick us off.
Director Hernandez has his hand up.
Oh, great, thank you. Director Hernandez.
I'm ready to come back to the boardroom.
anything else? All good?
All good.
Okay, thanks. I'll since there's not a bunch of hands going up, I'll take a stab at kind of hoping to hopefully, you know, put some consensus or build some consensus or direction. For me, it always has been about giving the, you know, our constituents, the public, access to our meetings and to us. And while I am also eager to get back into the boardroom, I do feel that we are meeting that that priority, for me at least, to give the public access to us. And probably, and I think General Manager Prum probably said it best, you know, having been on the board since 2014, many years before COVID, we by far have more participation post-COVID than we ever had when we were live. And you know, there's some other benefits to it too. Not only are we helping the state keep their COVID numbers down by not bringing everybody together, but we're also in some ways helping with traffic. Our meetings are during rush hour, and if we have in-person meetings, there's going to be at least 5 board members driving in their vehicles, you know, across town to attend a meeting, and then anybody from the public. So there's that as well from an environmental standpoint. And so I'm comfortable going back if that's what the board wants. But I'm not convinced that it's necessarily going to achieve more public, you know, participation. And so with that, I'm also comfortable not going back. And I know that doesn't probably doesn't help with direction, Glenn, but you know, that's kind of where I stand with it, is that it just seems to me that, and then I will say this, if we do go back, you know, I would like to try to make it so that we could have folks from the public attend the meeting. I think that's what you said, right? That they would be able to attend, but they would have to wear a mask if they're unvaccinated. And then as far as, you know, I don't want to do like a hybrid where half the board's there or part of the board's there and part of the board's not. I think that gets really messy and confusing for the public really quickly. So just my thoughts, kind of thinking out loud, but I don't know if it was helpful or not.
So I guess there's a lot of silence tonight. So one thing I would need to hear, if the board didn't say anything, and if they don't make a finding, then I'm looking to Mr. Gilpin. I think we have to go back in person. So I'll call it the dead person switch. If we don't take any action, we're forced to go into because the findings haven't been made, and the law says you have to make these findings the first meeting after, which was our last meeting, and then every 30 days thereafter. So silence is a vote in this case. So if the board wants to continue to do them remotely, we do need to have a motion, a second, and a vote to make one of these findings. Director Elitharp has his hand raised.
I've got
Okay,
three. I've got 3 hands raised.
Sorry, Director Elitharp.
That's okay. Yeah, I'm kind of like you, President Snell. I'm kind of flexible. I see the pluses and minuses of doing either one. I think I'd be comfortable going back in person if we required everybody to wear a mask. I think that, you know, that's what the city does in the city council meetings, and I don't think that's unreasonable. You know, the write-up here says, you know, requirement for persons attending public meetings to wear facial coverings if they're not fully vaccinated. Facial coverings are recommended for those who are fully vaccinated. I would go with the public health recommendation and just say everybody wear a mask. So I'd feel most comfortable going back in person if we did that. But, you know, on the other hand, you raised some good points on public participation, and I do believe we've had a lot more public participation in this Zoom environment. So, you know, if we went another couple months under the Zoom scenario, I'd be okay with that too, and just kind of wait and see how things develop by the first of the year. So.
Yeah, if I can just add to, since Director Althar, since you mentioned the city council, I did attend the last city council meeting. And I did notice while I was there that the council members are all sitting in their regularly assigned seats. They didn't do anything. Glenn, I don't know if you knew this or not, but they didn't do anything to further separate themselves. And as well as staff was up there as well. For the most part, they were wearing masks, but when they were speaking, they would pull their mask down or take it off altogether. And that kind of went same with the public speakers that came to the podium as well. Which makes sense. And then their staff was in the back of the room where they typically are. And it did not seem, they might have had less staff than they normally do in a meeting, but it did not seem that they had done any special accommodation to space them out either. Inside the public seating area for the city council meeting, they had every other row blocked off. And so there was a little bit of an attempt to space the public out. Okay, Director Boyd Hodgson.
Thank you. I agree with Director Elithar. I would also be comfortable going back if everyone was required to wear a mask. I think that's the public health recommendation. I think it's a good idea. I also attended that same council meeting that you were at, President Sinella, and I appreciated that they did block off every other row. They did not block off the in-between seats as we've done in our boardroom, which I think is a good idea. I think, the probability of transmission when everyone is wearing a mask is low. And I think that is conservative and it is safe. I have members of my family that are not vaccinated. They're too young. So it's important for me to try to protect them. So I feel like I would be willing to go back in that scenario. I want to make sure, though, if we go back and are in person, that we don't lose some of the accessibility features that we have by meeting on Zoom. And that's important. That's why, I raised the point of order that the transcript isn't on, because I know that there might be people that rely on that. Maybe they don't have speakers on their phone or on their computer and they can read as we're speaking. So I would like to be careful that we don't lose some of the accessibility and attendance. A couple of people have made the point that folks are attending more since we've been on Zoom. It is easier to attend. So I want to make sure that we preserve the accessibility and preserve that in our new normal as well. And I know that makes it a little bit more difficult because maybe that's a hybrid scenario that we haven't quite figured out yet, but it also enables more people to participate and makes it a more inclusive meeting space.
Okay, thank you. I have a question for either Director Boyd Hodgson or for staff. Does anybody know that does either the school district or the city, do they provide a Zoom option? I think both of them have way better technology from just videoing their meetings than we do currently. Do we know where they are with regards to that, or no? If we don't, we don't.
I don't know what they do, either the city or the school district, in terms of continuing to offer Zoom, even though they've returned in-person board meetings.
Yeah, my wife watches the school board meetings on their website live, which is nice that she can watch it while because even before COVID, we would videotape our meetings, but they weren't live. We would show them later after the fact. But I do not believe that she would have the capability to speak. She can only observe. So I like the idea of that flexibility. I just think that it may be a goal for us to shoot for, something for us to budget for in the future, a lot more along those lines. But I definitely like it. The suggestion by Director Boyd Hodgson. Director Althar, you re-raised your hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to offer, and I think I mentioned this the last time we discussed this, but the County Water Authority has been doing the hybrid mode for the better part of this calendar year. I think it was probably February or March they started offering that, and it's worked pretty well. So maybe they can help us with that technology. I don't know. I haven't been actually in person to a Water Authority board meeting yet, although the last 6 months there's been probably up to about maybe a third of the board members have attended live while, in person, while the rest have been on Zoom. So it seems to be working pretty well. So.
So President Sinella, I have a little bit of concern, and maybe Mr. Gilpin can help alleviate that concern. If we went to an in-person setting and we tried to allow continued use of Zoom, that's new for us, right? And anytime something new happens, you may get a technology glitch, like a video could pause. I'm not sure if AB 361 would kick in and say, hey, if your technology doesn't work, you have to suspend decision-making meetings, even if you have an in-person component. So Mr. Gilpin, I don't know what your comment would be regarding the provisions of 361 if it was a hybrid meeting.
Well, I'll venture a guess. I think the intent of that is it for districts that are only offering a teleconference platform. So because you have the right, if you have the right to go to the meeting and participate in public, then the teleconference videoing is, I guess, similar to what you used to do with your camera, where people could view your meetings. So I don't think it provides an issue.
Okay.
But again, this is uncharted territory.
Yeah, that's a good question, Glenn. I kind of see I don't think that the added conveniences and some of the positives about Zoom should slow us down or stop us from going back to in-person meetings. I kind of view it more, I think, I don't even know how we would even do Zoom at our next meeting with, the current setups that we have. So I think that suggestion is one that is more, for me, is more of a, let's aim for this. Let's build this out. Let's research and investigate as to what it would take to do something like that. And then ultimately, what is it going to cost, and do we need a budget for it, and have those types of conversations in the months to come. I can't even fathom how we would have a Zoom meeting from the board meeting, from the boardroom with our current, lack thereof of camera technology.
Is there a sense of urgency for us to go back in person? I mean, if we have these barriers and we can't imagine how we're going to do it, then why don't we figure that out and then do it all at the same time? I mean, I know that there are folks in the public that are asking us to go back in person. But is there a deadline that we're up against? Is there a sense of urgency that is objective?
There's, from a legal perspective, there's no near-term deadline. So, and Mr. Gilpin can add on when I'm done, but so every 30 days, if you wanted to remain virtual, you'd have to take an action. But I think that could go on for quite some period of time. I think it was out until like 2023, was it? Yeah, so.
Yeah, I don't think there's not necessarily a governmental deadline, but I do think that at least the three folks who have written letters to us, they've all three referenced that the school district's been able to do it, and the city council's been able to do it, and they're not offering Zoom in the same way that we do our Zoom meetings now. They do offer live video streaming of their meetings, but there's no way to give, if you want to comment on an item, you have to be there in person. And I think that's where they kind of tug at my heartstrings a little bit when they're, it's like, yeah, you're right. If the city council members can sit, 4 feet apart, maybe we should too.
Director Hernandez has his hand raised.
Okay, thank you. Director Hernandez?
The reality has been that when you say there's more people joining the meeting via Zoom, it's doubled. Usually it was one, now has been one or two, but again, just one. And the individuals that have been attending the Zoom are the ones that are requesting us go back live. So I think it was a convenience, it worked. And now that even those that have asked that from the public for us to go back live would be attending the meeting if they desired to speak. So I think the procedures are in place. I think we could have an in-person meeting. We do not need to try to do a hybrid with a video, with a Zoom. Those individuals that wanted to come to the board meeting as the public are welcome to come. That we all have to wear masks. That's fine. But I think it's time to try to get back to some sort of normalcy and not try to do any kind of hybrid hocus pocus with technology.
Okay. I'll be a number. I don't know if the second's the right way. I'll be a number 2 vote for what Director Hernandez said. I tend to lean more that way. And no issues wearing a mask.
So just so I'm clear, is what I'm hearing that it might be too hard to do hybrid right now? Is that the message? It might be too hard to do that right now?
It's unproven. We've done tests in the background and we think we have it, but it's a risk, right? And if we go in this broad step into this uncharted territory, I'm 90% sure it would work, but that 10% always bothers me. Other water districts are doing it in a hybrid fashion. I don't know what technology they have that may facilitate a hybrid meeting. I know what we have, and I know we'd have to do some, I wouldn't say heroic efforts, but we'd have to modify the way we would normally do things to ensure that it would work. I'm confident that we could do so, but I want the board to understand that there's some risk. And that's why I think the important thing is, and Mr. Gilpin answered it, is if the technology doesn't work, does it cause us to have to pause the meeting? And I heard him say no, as long as if you've opened it up to the public and they can come to the meeting, even if the technology, the Zoom component doesn't work, we should be able to conduct the business of the board at the meeting. So that makes me feel better knowing that.
Yeah, I think as long as we're moving in the right direction with good faith, it seems like it would be reasonable to keep trying to do a hybrid meeting. What I don't want to happen is that we say, oh, well, we just can't do it. And then we say, oh, we're going to revisit it. And then we never do. So if we could commit to trying to do it, and as you know, has been mentioned, other districts are doing it. It's not impossible. Yeah, there might be some technological issues. That happens all the time. You know, whether it's technology on our end or whether it's technology on participants' end, you know, we won't know. And so it would be unreasonable to have to stop the meeting because it might be the person who's trying to tune in. It might be technology on their end, for example, and we wouldn't know that in the moment. We couldn't prove that. So I think that as long as we are trying, I just don't want to, exclude someone that may want to come. And I think if anything, COVID has taught us that we can do hard things and we can do all kinds of things that enable more people to participate in the process. So now that we have that learning, I'd like to try to take it forward. Sure, get back to in person where we can meet and make decisions. I would enjoy that. I would like that very much, as long as I don't have to sit at the kids' table because we have to be 6 feet apart. So I think let's try that, but let's keep trying to move forward. You know, to make sure that it's inclusive, and let's just make a commitment that we're going to try. We can do hard things. I know we can. We sat through 2 days of strategic planning together. We can do it.
Could I just clarify something? We're talking about a hybrid, but I mean, really what we're talking about is, it sounds like all of the board members are going to come and be present in the boardroom. The boardroom will be open to the public. So now what you're really talking about is, can we provide a means for the public who doesn't want to come to the meeting to appear virtually to provide public comment, which I think is different from a legal standpoint from a teleconference meeting. And so I just want to clarify that, because if we're going to have a hybrid teleconference meeting, that means one of you could elect not to come in person. And I don't think that's what you've all been talking about. So that's my question.
Thank you, Jim. And please, colleagues, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the discussion's going along the line of all the board members would be behind the dais with mask on, and the public would be welcome to join us if they want to, and that any technology that we use to enhance that board meeting out further would just be above and beyond any requirement, right? Jim, Mr. Gilpin?
Yeah, I
Just
think
the-
that's right. I think with Glenn, I think I heard Glenn say his staff will be appearing virtually. So
But
is there a platform to allow the public to appear virtually to make public comment or comment on a agenda item that's different from this interaction we're doing here in a teleconference Zoom meeting?
No, he did, Glenn, and that could be another policy conversation. That I know that you currently have a policy in place for the employees to be socially distanced. I think with our senior staff, basically it's our finance team and our public relations team and our engineering team. I think our boardroom is large enough to spread out. If we could minimize the number of staff, but I don't see why we couldn't have some staff attend the meeting, Glenn.
Yeah, it's just different than what we've been doing. Our workplace rules right now is we don't allow congregation of employees in the same space. So like we don't have all hands meetings. We don't use conference rooms right now. We do everything via Teams, virtually everything via Teams at work. Even if the person you're meeting with is in the next office, we rely heavily on that just to keep as much distance as we can. So we can look into that. We can look at the rules, and I'd prefer everybody back. If we're gonna have anybody back in the boardroom, I prefer it be everybody. But I don't want to start violating our own internal policies either. But
I would agree.
let me handle the staff side of things. I want to make sure I get direction from what the board's going to do. And to the extent that we can do that within the rules we've established, I'll have key staff members in attendance at the meeting as well.
Okay. Well, thank you. I agree with you that I would like to have the key members of staff at the board meetings with us in person if we do indeed go back to in-person meetings. And it could be a good first phase, right, of going back to normal. That almost like you're testing it out with a smaller group of employees, and then if that goes well, then we can open it up a little further and a little further and a little further. So
yeah. Okay. So I'm hearing that November 3rd, we're going to be back in the boardroom.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. And all the directors, and we will, to the extent that we can, we'll continue to offer a Zoom platform for customers to, at a minimum, observe and listen in and provide comment if that functionality works as well. That will be our goal, is to allow them fully to participate from home.
And that's with masks on directors and anyone attending from the public and staff.
Yeah, so if I can touch on that just a little bit, are you suggesting that even the public would be required to wear a mask regardless of vaccination status?
Yes.
Okay. And Jim, I don't know if that raises any issues because the current law of the land doesn't require that. So I don't know if we get somebody that comes in and refuses to wear a mask that wants to attend the meeting, we need to be prepared for that contingency, but it's unlikely.
Well,
Yeah.
what's the city do? I mean,
the
they're
city
requiring-
has recommended.
It's recommended, not required.
If you're
That's not what their website says. The city website says it's required of everybody in the council chamber.
I thought the sign on the door last week was required if unvaccinated, but
Yeah, that's the
They
sign.
may have changed it. I don't know. But their website up until a week ago was saying it was required of everybody.
I think we should just to cover ourselves legally, whatever the regulation says from California, we just word by word just repeat it. And I don't know if we can come up with our own rules for our public meeting without maybe getting ourselves in trouble.
President Sinella, our risk manager, Tricia Wolslayer, is in attendance and has her hand raised, if you'd like me to call her.
Yes, yes, please. Thank you,
She may be able
Tricia.
to add something to that.
Thank you.
Tricia, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me.
We can.
Yes.
So I didn't plan on speaking, and I apologize in advance for maybe not being set up on the staff side, but my intention was just to be an observer. And hearing the discussion, I just wanted to chime in with a few things you might want to consider as you're making your final decision. One is we've talked, and of course, we've talked a lot about how we manage things, you know, inside the building and that kind of thing at work for staff. And this is a slightly different discussion, which is why I was trying to stay out of it. But we look at things like community transmission rates, which come from CDC, and that's how we talk about when we should be upping our mask wearing program indoors versus outside. And that's really, when you read the regulation from the for actually national and state almost agree these days, and it talks about in areas of high transmission, and I think it even includes substantial, and I'm getting in a little into the weeds, I don't want to go too far there, but there's community transmission rates that help decide when you should wear a mask indoors regardless of vaccination status. And so I'm hearing some board members indicate that from their personal safety perspective, but then also based on the regulations, you know, there was some comments about wearing a mask for everybody. And since we don't want to get into the concept of deciding who's vaccinated and unvaccinated, and, you know, we would never want to go there. It's much easier from everybody having the same direction. So if you give everybody the direction to wear a mask coming into the building, you have a lot better chance of compliance and less unrest than if you start, you know, splitting hairs about who can wear a mask and who can't and all that kind of stuff. So I just wanted to offer that. I've been watching the pandemic for our organization very closely, but then also as an emergency manager for many years, I've also been watching the pandemic. So I'm really commenting here tonight in the public space saying, I urge you to consider the concept that our transmission rates in San Diego County are still high to substantial, which means red to orange on CDC's chart. And the pandemic has been running in what people are speculating as cycles, and you've seen them yourselves. Every couple of months, things change. We're in what I call the honeymoon period right now, where things are trending downward, everything's looking good. It's October. We saw a surge last year, which in our case, in our organization, resulted in a higher number of cases than we had seen ever, starting about mid-November. And so my concern, and the reason I finally had to raise my hand, is because I just needed you to know that I think there's a real benefit to waiting. It sounds like there's a benefit on your end too, because you could figure out the technology piece and all that jazz, but there is also a public health and your personal health and safety things to consider. So I don't want to be too long-winded. I just wanted to offer a perspective. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, but I'm not here in an official capacity. And I just wanted to provide a comment as a member of the public. So thank you for hearing me.
Well, thank you. That was very well done and very helpful information. So the only thing I would want to clarify with legal is if we do require 100% mask wearing from the public, are we going to get into a position where we have to turn somebody away who's adamant about not wearing it, and we've denied public access to our board meeting? And is that going to be an issue?
Well, politically or legally. Obviously,
Mostly legally.
yeah. Legally, the opinion would be you could adopt a decorum requirement that everybody that comes into the boardroom has to wear a mask. There are some quote unquote ADA compliance issues that may come into play that you'd have to address on a person by person basis, but you can set your own requirements. I mean, shirts, shoes, blah, blah, blah for decorum, and the mask
Okay,
falls into that, subject to what are ADA accommodations, which are already incorporated into some of the regulations.
okay. Thank you, Jim. Any other discussion?
Greg has his hand up.
Oh,
Greg.
okay. Director Alatar.
Yeah, I'm on the city website right now, and going to the next meeting agenda, it says in the first paragraph, the city council meeting will require members of the public to maintain social distancing and wear a facial covering at all times while in the council chambers. So it's still there.
Okay, great. Then I'm based off that, and also
Oh, that's a cutie.
More importantly, our guidance from our legal counsel Gilpin, I'm comfortable with going back with mandatory masks for all who attend, including ourselves.
Okay, let's move on.
It sounded like there was the most consensus around that direction. So do we need a vote, Glenn, or is that good?
You're muted, Glenn.
The lack of an action to make one of those findings was all you needed to do.
Okay,
Right? So,
Glenn, I'd suggest that you take a vote relative to the decorum policy.
okay. On the wearing of mask mandate regardless of vaccination status.
Correct. You're going to open the boardroom subject to all attendees wearing masks unless they meet an ADA exception
Right.
for accommodations.
all right.
Do you need
I'll
a
make-
formal vote? Do we need a formal vote, Jim, or just a? Okay. Looks like
You
it.
need a motion, a second, and a vote.
So moved.
Okay,
Hernandez.
you want to, but thank you, Director Hernandez, but you want to just capture the full, we're going back to the meeting on November 3rd in person with masks required by all attendees.
Yes, I move that we go back to in-person attendance with everyone entering the boardroom wearing a mask for our next board meeting, November 3rd, I believe.
Okay, subject to our any ADA regulations or
Yeah,
requirements.
subject to ADA regulations for any.
Okay. And I'll second that. And then, but now that we've had a motion and a second, I'm going to make one more comment since this is the proper time to do it. I know, Jim, I'm sorry. I think it's great that we're going to try this, but just because we're going back in person to try it doesn't necessarily mean we're stuck this way. If we learn more by going back, if as Tricia mentioned, if the numbers of COVID do increase throughout the winter, there's nothing stopping us from going back. I guess I should probably confirm that with Mr. Gilpin, but it doesn't sound like we're stuck in this in-person role. If we deem it unsafe or it's just not working for whatever reason, we can go back and we can declare one of these situations that allow us to go back to an online meeting, right?
Right. Just think of it as an option. So if you always have the option to go back if there's a proclaimed emergency and you make one of those two findings we discussed.
Right.
And
Okay, so
President
we have
Sanella,
the,
one item before the board votes. Does this apply to committee meetings as well? We're talking about board meetings right now, but and maybe I'll look at Mr. Gilpin right now.
If there's an absence of a finding, Glenn, you're going to have to hold your committee meetings in person unless the committees would make a finding for that specific committee.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I just want to make sure the board members know that when you vote on this, that's going to change the way we're doing the committee meetings as well.
Yep. I think the goal is to try to get back as normal as we can, with the flexibility, knowing that if the circumstances change, then we can go back. Director Alford.
Yeah, just just a comment on the committee situation. I would suggest that they all be held in the boardroom just to better facilitate social distancing. That conference room is pretty cramped.
Good point. Thank you. And agree. Okay, any other discussion before we call the question and go vote? We just do it. And no public discussion or comments, Glenn?
No hands raised.
Okay, so
Just to clarify real quick, this is just mandating that in order to attend a public board meeting or committee meeting, we're mandating people need to wear masks. Is that what we're? Okay.
yeah, but I think it also solidifies that we are going back to in-person meetings starting on November 3rd.
Yep.
Okay. So we have a motion by Director Hernandez, a second by Director Sanella to return to in-person meetings on November 3rd with 100% requirement for masks within the board chambers, subject to any ADA requirements. I'll go ahead and conduct a roll call vote. Director Hernandez,
Yes.
Director Boyd Hodgson,
Director Boyd Hodgson let me know she was having some technical problems and may have to drop off and try to reconnect. So I don't know if she's been able to reconnect. Doesn't look like it.
okay. Director Pennick,
No,
Director Elithart,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes. And so the motion passes 3-1. And I'm not sure, I guess, what, Mr. Gilpin, what's the protocol with, do we just go 3-1 and move on, or?
Yeah, you just show her as absent on this vote.
Okay, thank you. Okay, motion passes 3-1. Thank you, everybody, for the thoughtful discussion on this item. Okay, let's move on to item 2.4, Association of California Water Agencies election of officers.
Yeah, this is a real simple item. So Aqua is trying to fill their officers. So president and vice president, they've recommended a slate that includes the current vice president, Pamela Tobin, to be the Aqua president, and the current Region 10 vice chair, Kathy Green, to be the incoming vice president. So a couple twists on this. One is we have to nominate who on our board gets to cast our vote. So that's one decision I need. And if any of our board members want to be considered to oppose one or both of these candidates, they would have to express an interest today. Staff would have to come back with a resolution to support that board member's candidacy. And then that could be submitted on the floor to be considered at the Aqua board meeting. So the voting will actually take place at the fall conference on December 1st. And I don't remember where the conference is, but so we would need to know who's going to be, and I believe Director Hernandez is the only director that's going to be attending that conference in person. We have 2 other board members attending virtually. You can vote virtually, so it doesn't have to be Director Hernandez. It's certainly easier that way. So what I need is to know, is the board okay with those 2 announced candidates? Is one of our board members interested in throwing their hat in the ring? And then who do we want to vote on behalf of Vallecitos? And with that, I'll turn it back to you, President Sanella.
Okay. I'm not interested, so you can check that box. And secondly, I really don't know enough about the candidates. Do we actually have somebody who's more involved with Aqua on our board, right? Either Aqua or wasn't it District 10 or something like that, or Area 10? Do we have somebody who kind of represents us currently?
I don't think we have any. Director Evans used to sit on the Region 10 board, but she's no longer there. So
okay, I thought Director Martin did too at one time, but and I'll leave it up to my colleagues. I have no preference, so just if anybody feels like they want to take that on as far as casting our vote, and I don't know if anybody knows any of the candidates that they want to speak either for or against, but I'm good with anything. Okay. So Glenn, what does it mean if we just don't say anything?
Well, we don't have to vote. I mean, that's an option. And we could just decide not to vote. If you want to vote, then who's going to cast our ballot? And are you okay with the slate of candidates proposed by the Aqua Nominating Committee?
Director Hernandez, since you're going to be there, do you want to cast a vote or not?
I'll be happy to do whatever the board wants. I will be there. So whatever the board would like, if you want to vote, I'll carry the vote. If you don't, I'm not interested in throwing my hat in the ring, but whatever the board would like, I'll be there.
Anybody have any issues with Hernandez representing the board at Aqua? Hearing none. Hearing none. Congratulations, Director Hernandez. Make us proud.
Oh, yes. You want me to vote then for those two? To clarify.
I trust your judgment on whoever you vote for.
All right, well, I'll make a point of asking around to see what the consensus is and do what is of the consensus.
Yeah.
It usually is, the transition is everyone moves up.
Yeah.
The one year that somebody threw their hat in the ring, it just flopped on the table. So I think it'll be easy to do. Thank you.
And just to clarify, Director Hernandez, I trust your judgment on this matter, but this matter only.
Well, thank you very much for that.
Okay, Director Ellisthorpe, is that a new hand?
Yeah, I just wanted to say with great power comes great responsibility.
That's
So,
right.
Yes,
Use it wisely.
I'll carry it. I'll take that burden on gladly.
I just wanted to say also, Pam Tobin has been the current vice president the last 2 years or whatever. And, she attends a lot of the committee meetings and she's been active. So that's the only input I have on the two candidates.
Right. Okay, if there's no other discussion, we'll move on. That ends our action items this evening. General Manager report.
Yeah, just two items. Tomorrow is Imagine a Day Without Water Day, and we will be releasing a video that we put together. The video does feature Mayor Rebecca Jones, and she was kind enough to share kind of a humorous approach to living with less water in your life. And the city has agreed to share the video on their website and social media platforms, which I think will give us a big boost in viewership. So my thanks to the mayor. And it's another great production by Alicia, Lisa, and Chris. So they always do great work, and this is no exception. The last item, just wanted to inform the board that staff is still working with the state on the utility bill payment arrearages program, and that'll help water customers with any unpaid water bill balances accumulated between March 2020 and June 2021. The formal applications are due on December 6th. We already submitted filled out the survey, so we're eligible. We have to make our application by December 6th. The state will actually start making payments as soon as November 1st for those agencies that get their applications in early. So I've talked with Wes. We're trying to get in as early as possible. There's no danger of running out of funds. They have more funds available than there were requests, but we certainly don't want to miss the deadline. We anticipate receiving approximately $300,000 in funding assistance, which will directly help those customers that have overdue bills. And then in January, the state will turn their attention to the unpaid sewer bills. So we think there's going to be enough money left over from the $985 million that was set aside to address the unpaid sewer bills. So we think we'll be eligible for that. We don't know how much that will be, but we'll keep tracking that program as well. And that's all I have to report tonight.
Well, that's excellent news on both fronts, Glenn. Thank you for sharing, and definitely exciting information for our customers who may be struggling during these COVID times. But also, I'm very excited to see the video and can't wait to see what our award-winning public relations team has produced. Let's move on to legal counsel.
Thank you. I just piggyback on what Chris had talked about earlier. Obviously, yesterday the governor issued the drought proclamation. It did add 8 counties, California, to that proclamation, including San Diego. As part of the report, or his request, was his finding that statewide residential water use per capita had declined 21% between 2013 and 2016. Interestingly, he was requesting in July, as part of this executive order, that we reduce water use by 15% as compared to 2020. The August report indicated it was down 5%. I know at the last one of our prior meetings, there was some conversation about committees. And so I just thought I'd point out for the board, if you're thinking about reorganization of committees, different than the private world, there's two types of committees. One is a standing committee, which is made up of less than a quorum, obviously, but has what is called continuing subject matter jurisdiction. It has meetings on a fixed regular basis. Those committees are subject to the Brown Act. The other type of committee is a temporary advisory committee, sometimes referred to as an ad hoc committee. They have a very limited purpose, single purpose. They're not perpetual committees that continue for years at a time. They're really designed for like a specific topic, something like our Hill Development Committee. I forget the exact name of it, but those are not subject to the Brown Act. So when we're talking about committees, there's those two different versions under the Brown Act.
Interesting. Thank you. Okay, San Diego County Water Authority.
Nothing to report other than our next regularly scheduled board meetings next Thursday, the 28th.
Thank you. Encina, anything to report? Director Hernandez.
Yes, we had our capital committee meeting this morning. We talked about the connection of the grid screen 2 out of the 4 with SCADA, and we're moving on the demo of the last 2 grid screens. We are on the electrical structural rehab for the cogen building, which was originally done in 1982. That's ongoing for a cost of $250,075. The climate control upgrade is also for the cogen building. Same year, 1982, $464,283. And the HVAC upgrade to the administration building for a total of $646,963. And that's the report.
Great, thank you. And the Policy and Finance Committee for EWA held our meeting last week, and there was really only one substantial agenda item. It was mostly just a formality, but we received a comprehensive report from staff on the comp and reimbursements for the recently passed fiscal year, and there was nothing, no concerns that came out of that report. Standing committees, have any other committees met? The finance has not met, so I have nothing to report. And Director Althart?
Yeah, the Engineering Equipment Committee met Monday, October 11th. The items we discussed were we completed a review of the development construction agreement. We got an update on the Tesla battery storage project. We got an update on the land outfall condition assessment, the Metal Arc Reclamation Facility odor scrubber #1 replacement project, Sage Canyon tank refurbishment project update, Palos Vista pump station electric starter replacement project update, and a proposal for a Coronado Hills pressure relief valve project.
Great, thank you. Any other committees?
The P3 committee has not met since our last public meeting, but I do have an announcement, and that is that the agreement has been put in place to start Palomar College students interning at Vallecitos beginning in the spring. And this is great news. It was a long time in the making, and I'm just grateful for the P3 committee for Chris Robbins' work on this. We worked with Jacob Shiba at Palomar College, and it's going to bring a pathway to good local jobs for local youth and local career switchers. So it's great news. We'll put some people to work through this process. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Exciting stuff.
Question
Yes.
for the policy committee. Have you made any headway at all on the I can't remember the word.
The scholarship.
Scholarship. Thank you so much.
We'll be providing an update to the policy.
Sorry, I think I'm
committee.
having internet issues. Are you talking about the scholarship
Yes.
program?
Yes. And the general manager was going to add some comment.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's going to be on the agenda at the next policy committee meeting. We've done some kind of surveys of other agencies that have scholarship programs. So we're going to be reporting out on our findings and seeking direction on how to move forward.
Oh, good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And,
Yeah.
and Director
We're
Boyd
always,
Hodgson,
I'm sorry, President Snella, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you kind of cut out on this. I know you're experiencing some technical difficulties. Please feel free to carry on if you can.
Thank you. We're all very supportive of the scholarship program. The devil's in the details, so we are trying to work out, sort of what it looks like that other places are doing, and we will have some kind of scholarship program, and we can't wait to get the board's input, including yours, Director Hernandez, since I know that you're a big proponent on this. So we'll at some point we will be bringing it to the board for discussion, and we look forward to that.
Thank you.
Great. Well, we'll move on to item 3.6, director's reports on meetings, conferences, or seminars. I do not have anything to report out at this meeting. Does anybody else? I see some heads shaking no, but I'm missing Elithar. Nope. Looks like we're good. Okay, thank you. That's concludes our reports this evening. There's no other business. Any director's comments or future agenda items? I do not see or hear anything. Okay, well, that takes us to adjournment. Thank you, everybody, for participating, and both on the staff and on the board, but also those who joined us out from the public. We always appreciate that, and everybody have a good night. We are adjourned.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.